Kai's Education all the way in New Zealand. So welcome to Friday. I've got my cup of coffee, and I also welcome a very special friend of mine, Heidi, who I met. Where we met? We met at a ISTE a long time ago. Where was that? Which year was that?
Oh boy, you're gonna test my memory now. I don't remember if gosh, it had to have been back maybe like in 2018, 2017, 2018.
Yeah, it was a while ago, and
I think it was in Philadelphia, maybe.
think so. Yeah, I think it was. And but you kind of really were one of the kind of our founder teachers. We like to say, like that helped us, align our products to what teachers require. And yeah, and it's thank you for coming along and showing what the great work you've been doing.
Yeah, I remember walking by your booth, and I remember one of my other friends, Chriso from Greece, she has a product called Flanicle. And I remember walking by her and saying, Chriso, you need to see this. Like, there's so much that can be done with this. Like, you need to see it. And I remember dragging her over there and kind of went from there.
Awesome. So I can see we've got some friends joining in. Welcome, Angie. We've got people from all over the place: Canada, Margaret Allen from Australia as well. So a little bit of everywhere joining us in this call. And so today we're going to be doing what Heidi's created. Actually, it's not something that Bruce created this time. It's what Heidi has created, and I think it's a really significant step in getting kids into math and how we can fold in. I like to think about coding and all these subjects and cross curricular as like a recipe, and each element in that recipe is separate elements, and we kind of folding that in to give our students the right outcome. So whatever they're going to become, just like a recipe is going to become something, a souffle, and our students are going to become different. They're going to have different careers, and we've got to prep them for that. But part of that is the core math. And Heidi, take it away.
All right. So, math in action. So this is going to be a presentation that we're going to do at the ISTE conference. So our first slide, and I do want to give her due diligence. Heather's last day is today. So she's busy closing out her classroom today, or she'll be joining us. Her and I embarked upon this. So my background at Marquette University, I am a 30-year public educator who's retired, who loves computer science, loves the integration of it and trying to fit things in. I have a math background and a science background. So I was a math specialist for about 4 or 5 years, did some instructional coaching. So I reached out to my daughter, who I thought I could get to do this, but she was busy with her fourth grade classroom, so she didn't have time. But Heather, who is the technology integrator, who also will be moving back into the classroom this next year, one of her colleagues said, yeah, I would love to do the robots as part of what I'm doing. And I would love to integrate it so that I can help other teachers, because she was part of the library and like a library media specialist who was always finding ways to connect. So the first thing I want to talk a little bit about is the black hole. And on the link to this slide, and we'll make sure we link the slides in at the end, I had a chat GPT conversation about this black hole of what I like to call the progression of computer science standards. So I asked him, and my main question for ChatGPT was, what curriculum progression exists for K-5 computer science lessons that focus on math? I knew it was a black hole. I've already done this work. So I was looking to hopefully validate it for this webinar to say, yeah, like I am on the right track. So ChatGPT gave me code.org, it gave me Tinker, it gave me a bunch of other like smaller curriculums that had a math, not focus, but had part of math within its computer science curriculum. And then it also gave me this example progression map, and it says simplified. And I was curious, so I asked ChatGPT, Where did you get it? Like, how did you create this? What were your resources? And ChatGPT told me that it synthesized this information. So it actually, and he or she, ChatGPT told me that this is why my synthesis it better aligns with grade level math expectations. And the first one is that it anchors in Common Core state standards of the math progressions, which is what I did. Like, this is not a coding curriculum that aligns to math. This is a math curriculum that coding happens to align to, and it makes those math standards come alive in action so you can actually see the action behind the math. Next, ChatGPT told me that it prioritizes math first, not CS, which is what I did. And it also identifies and helps fill gaps in math rigor. So when we take something that's done in coding and we say, oh, yeah, it aligns to this math standard after the fact, there's gaps in math rigor there. So now I've taken the math coding or the math concept, here's our math standard, and said, okay, this is how coding fits so that we don't have those gaps in math rigor for that. And then for Heather and I, our why is really that it's showing math in action and it's highly engaging for students. So in ChatGPT, at the synthesis, it said my synthesis anchors to CSS math progressions, and he gives basically an overview of the chart and said that it allows you to concretely connect to CS practices and to math students, the math standards the students are already working toward. And that's key because elementary teachers don't have time to put another thing into their curriculum. But we all know when PISA scores came out, our math standards for the United States were going down, not up. So the more we can help kids make connections with mathematics and see it in action, the more engaged and the more they will truly understand the concepts. This was what it told me about Code.org and Tinker, that they primarily scaffold computational thinking and programming logic, not math curriculum pacing. So if we're not focusing on that math curriculum pacing, it ends up being just another thing we have to try to fit in. The current resources leave gaps in math rigor, and we know that because the clear explanations of how the activities develop the math content aren't there. It's focused on the coding content. So the second key thing is that students don't want to be passive learners anymore. They want to be involved in the learning process from step one. It's really important that they are part of the process of how they're going to learn, what they're going to learn, and how they're going to demonstrate their knowledge. We'll just have a little video here I want to share. Hopefully the audio will work. Can you hear the audio, Bruce?
No, we can't.
Going how many? 8. 8? Okay. Like to it.
Hands go up, like you saw him, like, yeah, I got it, right?
Oh,
Like,
so what does the top
we have
column
engagement.
So that's what we have to do. Next one. I'm the card. Send that. What is this? How much? So you can take. How much is this? Oh my god. But it's 20.
I love the collaboration that's going on.
Yep.
We are probably experiencing here. Like, why is it fine?
And the questions too. Why is this? You heard the why.
So what grade is this?
This is first grade. And you'll see, without even saying anything, one of the members of the group, and Heather's really said the best groups are 3 series. Just needs to work out real fast when you use 3 in a group. You have one laying out the tiles already.
And not here. So having 2 each. And I'm just going to say, I think that's
So they're scanning the card.
I'm really impressed that they're doing loop at this level.
The guy in my 5 6 no of the funniest choice goes determine what me God father. Yeah, to give us a shot. And now start it like
So actually, I think this is second grade. Although, yeah, this is actually second grade lesson. Well, not first grade. I was in second grade. Second is where we do the P, and it's a great place to introduce exercises.
Play with. Oh yeah. Play. Don't make it irritating.
Look at the engagement. And again, the hands go up. Watch it. I put it in slow motion. There's the fist bump. Like, to me, that's what it's about. When those hands go up, like, they've got it. They're engaged. And to me, that is just so key when you're working with these concepts. So one of the key findings and some of the key findings, so it was really important for me. I've spent 30 years my last 5 were administration. So 25 years. I spent 25 years directly working with students. And so when I created these, now being in a university setting, I wanted to make sure I paired up with a teacher so that I could get feedback on what was working and what wasn't working. So one of the things that we found that she said that she absolutely loved and what was working is this was a kindergarten lesson. So, my students loved this lesson. They all cheered out loud the first time. All groups were able to successfully program and run their KaiBot with minimal assistance from myself or the aide. Several groups did get a bug alert, but were able to correct the issue with some assistance from myself or the aide. Many groups were self-correcting their bugs before the lesson finished. And that's kindergarten. So students as young as kindergarten are successful with these concepts. And then another thing that Heather was identifying common misconceptions for me. And the students were really having a hard time with that placement piece, because when we say move forward 4, if I put it on 1 and it moved forward 4 from there, it would land on the 5. And so, but the students would say, but we're only moving forward 4. Well, right, you're starting at 1. So in the lessons, we developed a start tile, and you can either label it with a piece of paper like she did, or you could take tile 30 and just put a sticky note on it and label it as a start tile. So that start tile is a really important concept when it comes to mathematics. So that was part of our revision process. So I'm not necessarily going to go through this whole piece of it. I'm going to go through and I'm going to show the lessons, but Heather actually here, and we're going to do this at the conference, we're actually doing a model lesson. So that video lesson there is her actually teaching the concept, just as she would to her students. And then there's the in-person lesson. I'm actually going to take and walk you through that second grade lesson in person through the webinar. And so here are the resources, and I'm going to go off this sheet. I'm going to show you the spreadsheet, the driving force behind everything, but I do have a spreadsheet key here that you can see later. So I'm going to stop share real quick here. I am going to, in the chat here, I'm going to put the presentation so that everybody can see that presentation, and then the code for the spreadsheet. I am going to share the spreadsheet. So the spreadsheet is quite in-depth. I started with, and I'm going to scroll over on, I'm going to scroll over on my spreadsheet because I started with the Common Core state standards. So I looked at all the different standards and said, okay, what is the coding concept like, and how does a computer use it for mathematics? How would it use it to actually demonstrate mathematics? So I looked at all of the standards, so they're all in here. And then I also focused a lot on those mathematical practices, because when we look at what the kids did in that lesson that you just saw, they are using almost every single one of these mathematical practices. So that's a huge part of actually being able to see the math in action. And then at the end of the spreadsheet is also the algorithms and programming standards by CSTA, the Computer Science Teachers Association. Most states have adopted computer science standards and use this as their basis for the work that they've done. So then in here, I also have a progression model. So these are the K-5 math standards by aspect of rigor. And you'll notice that a lot of the ones that we focus, they're highlighted in yellow, are actually in the concept only and concept and procedural. What we've done by taking and adding the coding aspect and introducing them to how a computer would use the coding to demonstrate the mathematics behind these concepts, we've moved it into application. So the standards aren't listed in application, it's concept and procedural, but we've moved it into application by using coding, therefore increasing the rigor of their math through the alignment with coding. I also have a lot of resources on here for teachers if they want to remix or use these lessons in a different way. So these tile templates, you have all the tiles here, but then for each of the lessons, I've listed out and put screenshots of the templates that were used in those lessons, but teachers could modify them any way that they want to. I also have a tab here with all the coding cards and when they're introduced, reinforced, and mastered. So this lists all the coding cards. And then we have when they're introduced, when they're reinforced, and when mastery occurs. And because the spreadsheet's so big, it's hard to navigate this like on a webinar, which is why I linked it in there. But we've introduced almost all the coding cards by the time they hit 5th grade. Now, mastery, no, especially functions. We get into functions at the very beginning of 5th grade and do it extensively in 5th grade. But Heather's already asked for middle school lessons. So we're going to push these up over the summer. We're going to add 6, 7, and 8 here as well. So then in the My Code section, just for my own personal reference and for anybody else like a curriculum director that wants to look at this or somebody that understands math progressions, it has all of the basic coding cards for each lesson. So you'll see in this first kindergarten lesson, it's one-to-one correspondence. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for the fact that I understand that if I use a move forward arrow card, coding card, it will move forward one tile. So for each orange card, it's going to move forward one tile, that one-to-one correspondence. From there then in lesson 2, now we have put it into representation of numbers. So if I say move forward 4, the students understand that it will move forward 4 tiles. And the number 4 represents 4 movements forward of a specific interval. I can also use this and I can give the kids or I can give my students problems like counting on. I can say start at the number 8 tile and move forward 4. So it all depends on how you want to use them. And then in lesson 3, we start to do some simple addition problems where they're adding numbers less than 5, but they're adding 2 of them. And we're also introducing a right turn. 1st grade, we review. And the other thing is these lessons all build on each other. So when we go through and we do this, the last kindergarten lesson becomes the starting point, in this case, for the first grade lesson. So here they're doing more addition problems with multiple numbers. Then in lesson 2, they use 3 numbers. So now they're adding with 3 numbers. And then in 1st grade, in the 3rd lesson, they're going backwards. So they're doing subtraction. So we have basic addition, and then we move to subtraction. In 2nd grade, one of the foundational pieces for mathematics the foundations is repeated addition. So our 1st grade lesson, again, reviews both addition and subtraction. So they have problems that will involve both addition, the forward, and subtraction, the backward. And I'm really looking forward to doing negative numbers with the coding cards as a side note, because I think there's some really cool stuff we'll be able to do. Lesson 2 and 3 then really gets into the repeated addition. And we do that through something called looping. So the students will use that loop to repeat a command, in this case, 3 times. So if I want to move forward 3, and I do that 3 times, so I have 3 plus 3 plus 3, that is 9. And during these lessons in second grade, there's just some tips in there too. If students start to make the connection with multiplication, push them there. Don't make them go there though. If they don't have that connection yet, they don't need that until third grade, but it will open the door where some students will be able to say, hey, that's really multiplication, because they're going to understand that repeated addition in that loop really represents multiplication.
Yeah,
So
sorry
that,
to interrupt you there, but I've come across, when we've been doing KaiBot in the classroom and testing in New Zealand and stuff, we do find that those kids automatically go, oh, it's looping, it's looping 5 times, and then then they get that the concepts of building into them by default without being, like you say, pushed in. So it's fantastic. Also, these cards are available in a large format print, so you can download them, print them out on a paper printer, and put them in the playground and get the kids to do hopscotch or whatever, based program the other students to do it.
yep, all great points. So third grade has those loops, and then they're also going to do division with backward loops. And that's one thing that really we don't spend a lot of time when we go through division. We don't spend a lot of time. We give kids like that standard algorithm to use, or we use, partial products to help them work backwards, but we don't really go through repeated subtraction. And by repeated subtraction, there's connections there where those coding cards go within those lessons to show the divisor and the dividend, and they start making the connections on which one's which as they go through and work through the problems with division in third grade. The other interesting concept that we introduced there as well is ordered pairs. So the last the last lesson goes into ordered pairs. So, for example, the one that's listed here, you have a loop that you're going to loop it only one time, but you're going to go backward 13. So if I take 13 divided by 1, that's going to give me 13. My ordered pair there is 1 comma 13. On the flip side of that, if I look at the ordered pair 13 comma 1, in other words, I'm repeating my loop 13 times, but I'm only going back once. That's very different than 1 versus 13. So kids really get a good grasp during that year of what ordered pairs are and the differences between 1, 4 and 4, 1 as an ordered pair. Then in fourth grade, we go into inequalities, and we start doing conditionals. That's where we introduce the conditional. So if something is true, then I want you to do this. So in this case, if 13 is less than 41, then, and we can scan one of those emotions. And I got tons of feedback from the classroom teacher that the students just loved scanning the different emotions. Then they do a specific emotion. So if the statement's true, then they do the emotion. If it's not, if that statement would be false, if it would say 13 is greater than 41, that would be a false. Then it wouldn't show any emotion. It would do nothing. That's why in the next lesson, we introduce the else command. So we expand off it. So if the statement is true, then I want you to do this emotion. If the statement's false, else, then it's going to do a different emotion. So you have that if then conditional going on. Then in lesson 3, we review, and the classroom teacher gave us tons of feedback that they need more division practice in fourth grade. So we go back to division in the last lesson, and we review some division problems in the very last lesson. And then in fifth grade, we introduce variables. So with a variable, and this goes directly to input-output tables. So they're working with input-output tables. If I set my variable to 3, and then I increase it by 2, so if my input is 3 and I increase it by 2, my output then will be 5. In the very first problem, they're determining if it's true or not. So I'm going to read my variable. It's equal to 5. Then I want my KaiBot. In this case, we introduce the color cards. It's going to light up green. After we do that in the second lesson, then now we're doing the full input output table. So they're not just going to set the variable, increase it. Now they're going to put it in a loop because they're going to want it to repeat so many times. So here we've set our variable to 3. They're going to repeat this loop 5 times, and they're going to increase by 2 each time. So they'll have 3, the output will be 5. Then the output will be 7. Then the output will be 9. Then it'll be 11. And the last one will be 13. So they'll check that with a conditional. And if the variable is equal to 13, then it's going to light up blue. The third lesson takes it a little bit further. We talk about abstraction. How can we simplify this code? Well, in the last one, they use a loop and they use a conditional statement. In this one, we use a card that it's a start repeat and you're going to repeat until. So it's a conditional loop. So here they're using the condition and the loop within one command. So these red cards represent the conditional loop. It simplifies our code. It's going to say that I'm going to set my variable to 3. I'm going to increase it by 2, and I'm going to keep doing that. I'm not going to give it the number of times. I'm just going to keep doing it until the condition is met and my variable equals 13. And then the last lesson is just a really brief introduction to functions. We're going to have the student set 2 separate functions. The first function is just setting their variable. And the second function is how much it's going to increase by. So they can use this code here for any problem because they set the functions. All they have to do is change the values in the functions up here. So I can use this for any problem. Once I set it up, all I have to do is change the green number cards. So I could set my variable to 5. I could increase it by 4. And then it would change the green value down here. I have to figure out what that would be. And I can use this code and I don't have to rewrite it each time. So that's just the progression of the different lessons. What I also have in here for those people that want to view it I do have the Common Core state standards. And then we got a little bit of help from ChatGPT. And it goes through the different states that are not aligned to Common Core. And it tells you if it matches exactly, which most of them do, or if it's a partial match to the Common Core state standard. So I do that for all the grade levels. And then you can also see the comments that the cooperating teacher, the classroom teacher made as they went through the lesson, what needed to be revised, what worked well. These were just the notes that I went through and feedback that she gave me to make revisions in the documents themselves, which were so helpful. So we just wanted to open that up and show you that when you pair somebody that has that content knowledge with a classroom teacher and they're actually piloting the lessons, you can come out with something that's really meaningful, really strong, and really can have an impact on students. I think, Bruce, the main goal that I think both Heather and I had here is she's a big proponent of CS for all. So computer science for all students, and so am I. And a lot of the research that we've done and a lot of the research projects I've been a part of, we create these really great integrated novel units. But when that teacher leaves, the instruction leaves. With something like this, there's 3 lessons, 4 lessons in 5th grade that each teacher has to deliver. If I, as a classroom teacher, can do these 3 lessons, it's going to increase engagement. It's going to get my kids understanding mathematics and how computers use that math to actually make things happen behind the scenes. I was a director of curriculum. As a director of curriculum, I can say my school is doing CS for all. Every child is going to get computer science instruction. And even if a student comes in late to the game, let's say they moved to my school in 4th grade, because it's only 3 lessons, I could definitely have some intervention time taken out. And some of those prior lessons could be used with that student prior to getting to the lesson that they're at, because they're all progressional.
And what I love is that it's not a CS teacher that's having to deliver this. It's a math, it's primarily math. And the coding is just, folded in there. So, yeah, I love that. When I first opened this spreadsheet, when you first sent it to me, I'm like, what is this? It's like it felt very overwhelming for me because I'm just used to like opening a lesson plan and just following that through. But having this upper layer structure, really now that I'm starting to get familiar with it, I understand the value of having that structure. So yeah. Now I
Yeah,
think yeah.
that structure was more for me for sure than it was for anybody else. But I want to put it out there for other teachers that want to see it, or if there is a director of curriculum that wants to see it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you don't have to, like you say, you don't have to use it, but because the lesson plans are available, so you can just dive straight into a lesson and just do that lesson. We don't need to do all that if you don't want to.
Yep. So here's an example of one of the lessons. So this is grade 2, lesson 2. This is the one that we're going to be modeling at ISTE. So it outlines the math standard. It outlines the computer science standard. It talks about what do we want students to know, understand, and do. It gives the preparation. So if any preparations needed on how to lay out the tiles or just reminding people to make sure the KaiBots are charged. Then it has the teaching guide. There are large printable KaiBot card deck. And the classroom teacher that had been using this, she actually printed these out. Each one's about an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. She laminated them and then she put magnets on the back so that she could use it on her whiteboard and lay them out with students. And her students actually really like using them too. Then it has the review. So which cards do you need to review? Which ones are you introducing? If you're introducing new ones. And then what it would look like. And then there's a whole section on explain that will walk you through. Here's the code. Here's what you want to model for students. So here's the model problem. And then it tells you how to model that for them. If there's any points of review, there's a review with students what an array is and have them move the tiles around to create an array for the problem. So here's the array for this problem. So again, just more directions on working with students and how you explain it. There's also a video here that'll go through what the KaiBot looks like when it moves through this program. And then here's a great thing to show students. So here, and this is what we really want people to understand, that like when code.org does loops, they're doing loops. I think it starts like in first grade, maybe even start in kindergarten, but in the first grade, but they're just looping and repeating an action. They're not necessarily understanding the loop for the purpose of the loop. So in this case, on the left side here, we have it laid out as repeated addition. Move forward 3, move forward 3, move forward 3. Then in the second one, we put it in a loop. I want to loop 3 times and move forward 3 each time so that they're making that connection between repeated addition and multiplication, how they're similar and how they're different.
Now, did you see the different type of brackets that I don't know if you've ever noticed the different type of brackets we have on these cards. Like sometimes we use a square bracket, sometimes there's a squiggly bracket, sometimes there's a little bracket. And those little brackets are really a good friend to have because you have to open it and close the matching bracket. And I think if you start that with the kids when you're doing these coding cards, is that helps you a great deal of pairing the brackets together to make sure you open and close. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point because, and there's another video I have that we're going to show at ISTE too that has students and they're troubleshooting that. They keep getting a bug alert because they started the loop, but they never closed the loop. And so it's interesting by the series of questions that the teacher asks, she never just tells them, she just asks questions. The student's able to discover for themselves what the bug is. And they finally figure out that, yep, they've opened the loop, but they haven't closed it. And looking at those brackets to make sure that, you have the beginning bracket and you have the ending bracket.
I don't know if you've noticed, but when I see, when I've come across the first time kids using KaiBot and they get a bug alert on the robot, and they go, oh, it's a bug. They can switch it off and switch it on. because that's kind of a habit that we tend to do. Oh, we've got to, the phone, iPad's frozen or something. Oh, switch it off, switch it on. Okay, the KaiBot's got a bug, but that bug is actually just telling you there's a bug in the program. So you don't need to switch it off and switch it on again.
Yeah. But I mean, they do the right thing. I mean, they do, by turning it off and turning it on, like that is what we teach them. That's the first line to do for everything, right? And then you look at them and say, so how'd that work for you? And then that let them discover, well, yeah, that really didn't do what I needed it to do. I still keep getting the bug alert. Well, why might that be? And there have been times when I've been working with students that their programming skills are beyond mine, especially at that middle school level. And all I can do is ask questions because I don't know the answer, and they'll finally look at me. Well, don't you know the answer? No, we're problem solving here. Like I'm trying to help figure out what the answer is, but no, I don't know what it is. Like, yeah. And that's just the place that coding takes you. You become like this, there's a term for it, a lead learner. You're not always the lead learner. Sometimes you are a learner and the students are the ones that are kind of in that teacher facilitator mode because they might know more than what you do. It's really a collaborative process because you're all troubleshooting and trying to figure it out together. So, yep. And then each one of these lessons, too, based on feedback from the teacher, we've changed them quite a bit, but they actually have these explore guides that go with each lesson. So, if you're looking for like that formative feedback or just that quick check to see how students are doing, let's see, explore. So in this case, their explorer, create a program using a loop for the number sentence, and it has it there what number is being repeated, how many times will this number be repeated. It has them drawing their array in the space below, and then just using symbols or potentially even taking the cards and putting the cards on top of the boxes. They can start to make those connections between the code that they're designing and then when they actually run that code. So each of the lessons has that explore. And then I was just going to show one more lesson real quick, and then I'll take questions if people have questions.
I wish math was this fun when I was at school. I would have learned a lot more math. I would have got into coding a lot younger.
Yeah, well, and hopefully, and that's the whole thing is both Heather and I've been a part of a lot of different research initiatives around computer science. I wanted to help fill a gap of making something that's scalable, making something that every teacher feels like, yeah, I can do this. Like, this is worth my time. I can do this. I can do 3 lessons a year. I have to teach these concepts anyway. It's just going to make them understand it better. It's going to increase my math test scores. Like, I can do this. So hopefully that's
I've got a question coming in from Jen. So just see if that works. Jen, you should be able to join us now for a question, a live question. Renelle's asking, is there an assessment piece in the lesson?
Yeah, so the assessment piece is really that explore guide that I showed you. They can use that. And then also within the lessons themselves, another assessment piece, I'll just scroll down to the end of it. So in 1st and 2nd grade, we keep the prompting questions for assessment checkpoints pretty basic in K1, 2. But by the time they get to 3rd grade, we ramp that up a little bit. So for 3rd, 4th, and 5th, it's going to have those basic understandings like that recall and comprehension questions. It also has an intentional math and programming connections because we want the students to understand the connections between programming and math. It has a reasoning and debugging section to ask questions along those lines. You also have higher order thinking where you can have more open-ended type of questions that they could either answer auditorially or you can have them put it in writing. And then they also have those reflective prompts, the metacognitive and self-assessment. Any of these, like any of those reflective prompts, you could easily make those into an exit ticket, just copy and paste them into a little quick check exit ticket that you give kids before they leave. And then again, that explore guide, just collecting those will give you a lot of insight and taking a look at those on how kids are progressing with their coding skills. So
And then,
the other lesson, oh, go ahead. Yep.
and then Jen's got well, I don't know if it's a statement more than a question. She goes, I love how these lessons really bring the problem to life and break down the steps to solving the problem. She also does say, do you have any tips for teachers getting started, especially if they've never used robots in their classrooms before?
Yeah. The tip for getting started, I mean, is just jump in. It really is. Like that's kind of that mentality, that growth mindset, that experimentation. It's okay not to get it right the first time because the robot's going to tell you if the math is wrong because it's not going to do what you had expected it to do. The outcome was unexpected. It's not that you failed, you just didn't get the correct outcome that was expected. So you go back and you debug and you fix until you get the expected outcome. It's not right or wrong like it is on a worksheet. You know, you turn the worksheet in, oh, I got this one right, I got this one wrong. You just have an unexpected outcome, you know, that has to be fixed.
Exactly.
But yeah. And then yeah, I mean, ideally, Jen, I think what would, like if I take on my principal hat and because I was the principal of a K-5 school, I might say, okay, like I might do, and this could easily be done in like a 3-hour PD where the teachers are introduced to the KaiBot, they understand how to program it, they understand how to do the lessons for their grade level. You could do it in a 2 to 3 hour PD, and I think most teachers would feel pretty confident. But then I'd cycle back maybe 1 or 2 more times just to check in with them. Hey, do you have any questions? You know, are there any specific lessons you're struggling with? Do you need anything to be modeled? It would be ideal if you could take your technology coaches, and the technology coaches could become experts with this, that they could go in and help support classroom teachers if they were struggling. But again, it's only 3 lessons a year, so it's super doable. The other. Oh, go ahead. Any more questions?
Another question from Shantae. As you've been working on coming up with lessons and activities, are you starting with the standards? If you are starting with the standards, are you picking standards based on any research that you did on what teachers are needing, or just based on your own knowledge?
Great question. So I'm starting with a lens of math. And I'm saying, okay, with math, how would a computer do this? So for example, the lesson that I have up in front of us now, this is division, right? So if I look at division, how does a computer do division without an operator? And that's the key thing. So, because I really struggled with this. So if you use a platform like Scratch or Tinker and they have the coding blocks, they have operators. So they have like little blocks that you can drag in where students can actually put the equation in and say 2 + 3. And then the computer has things behind the scenes that it's doing in order to do that operation. Well, KaiBot doesn't have operators. So I had to think a little bit deeper. And I had to think, okay, well, when kids do division, what is division? Well, division is really just repeated subtraction. And I don't think I've ever actually seen that necessarily described that way. To me, when I was going through math, when I go back in my own knowledge, I was a middle school math teacher, so we did a lot of things, but I don't think I ever taught a student how to divide a problem using repeated subtraction. We did it by partial product. So I'd have them, for example, if I had 24, I'd have to have a bigger number for partial products because that one is just kind of going through that way. That's really the process I struggled through, was to make those connections. So in division, I used repeated subtraction. And then here you have your dividend, you have your divisor, and you have your quotient. So when students go through in the teaching guide in here and they go through this, and it is math heavy because a lot of teachers, especially in the upper grades, can still struggle with the math concepts. So when we look at factor pairs, there's 2 different kinds. There's unordered pairs and there's ordered pairs. We need to make sure that the students understand the difference between unordered and ordered. In ordered, there's a difference between 1 and 16 and 16 and 1. Because when you look at XY coordinates, they're in different places. And the reason it matters is because of that commutative property. So you have the commutative property of multiplication. You also have the graphing connections. Those graphing connections also go into area models, and it's important for area models. So there's lots of reasons of why it matters. And coding really helps highlight the why it matters, because you can program them to look different. So here, KaiBot uses a divisor of 3, which is the backwards 3. How many times would it need to repeat the move of backwards to get to the number 1 tile? That would be a 3 here, 2. And you know what? I just might have found a bug myself, because I have to go back. I'm going to highlight this first, because it might go back to this. Oh, no, we're on the start tile. Never mind. Okay. I just answered my own question. I thought I might have had a bug, but I don't think I do, because we have the start tile here at the beginning instead of over on the other end. So
Yeah,
it goes
it's on
back.
your
We'll end
opposite
on the
end.
1 tile.
So, but what I see from this is I see that there's different ways that we can use math with KaiBot. Obviously the one way is counting how many times KaiBot moves forward or backwards or whatever, or adding up the amount of times it's repeated on the forwards and the backwards. I also see, yesterday we were having a discussion in the office about with our developers about arrays, and we said, okay, well, an array is a grouping of a set of numbers or letters or words, and in a number, if it's an array of numbers, then it might be you could have 3 groups of 3 sets of tiles. So 3 by 3 by 3 grid of tiles. And that's an array. And then, but you could also use the tile numbers as the contents of your array. And I love that. And with KaiBot, we've got the read tile number variable card. So you could use that as well, to really, there's a lot of growth here. You could start basic and we can scaffold it up, but you could use the tile number to say, okay, what is this tile plus that tile plus that tile? And what is the total number of that array of 3 tiles? And then you can say, is that tile array larger than this tile array? So there's quite a lot of, there's a lot of scope that you can do with thing. Jen has asked, are the lessons aligned with TEKS?
Yes. Yeah, in that spreadsheet document, we have put TEKS in there. So
yeah, and a big project that we've been working on internally in Kai's education is really doing a house clean. A big shout out to Arnie, one of our team members, has done such an amazing job. Not just Arnie, Kane as well. 2 people, Kane and Arnie. And they've really done an amazing job. So now in Kai's education, Heidi's lesson, you can just search math in action, and in real time, the collections of the lessons. So much like a lesson collection, I'm not signed in, but you can come into a collection of lessons and you can go and complete grade 1 to, for those grades, for those lessons that Heidi's talked about. And you could also go into the actual lessons. We can, so again, I can just type in math in action as a keyword. I can also just use the slider and just choose grade 1. And here you go, just the lessons for grade 1. So using the sliders to choose the lesson makes it really easy to get access to Heidi's lessons.
Yeah. And when I did the lessons, it was just part of a project that I wanted to work on and fill. And so they're all Creative Commons lessons. So teachers can feel free to remix and, do what they need to do with them to make them work for their classroom.
Yeah, that's right. They're all Google Docs inside of this platform. The platform is a filter, and all the alignments are also listed there. So you can actually search for, I don't know what the TEKS math, grade 2 standard would be, but it's, AB-45, and you can actually search for that particular standard if you're looking to tick off that standard in the learning portal.
Yeah. And just to go back to Shantae's question, so it's not so much research I did on what teachers need, but more research and connections mathematically that make the coding fit with what the math is, not the other way around. Not taking a coding lesson and saying, oh yeah, we cover math with it, but taking a math lesson and say, this is how coding can fit this math lesson and show you the math in action.
Yeah, that's spot on. And we want to do the same thing for, we've got a couple of new products coming out. We've got math, we got kitchen literacy and market math. And those two products are also aligned for K through to grade 2 for a very engaging way of learning math with a blend of coding inside of it. Renal says, follow on from Chantal's question, have you shared this with other math curriculum directors or any other feedback outside of your normal network?
No, that's going to be the exciting part is getting this out there so that we can get feedback from other people. So it's just been our small little network that's done it. However, I have shared it with a couple of my colleagues that have jobs that are more like at that university level. And there's been a lot of interest in spreading the word and, potentially maybe even rolling it out like at a state level.
Okay. And for those of you attending ISTE, we're from New Zealand, and we've cooked up a really awesome giveaway. Do you know what that is, Heidi?
Not even, no.
Okay, Shantae's got one ring to rule them all. Yes.
Oh, I was looking for a math connection. Good job, Shantae.
Yeah, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be giving away a little piece of New Zealand, a Weta Workshops Lord of the Rings One Ring at ISTE, so as a giveaway. So that'll be shining away on our booth, plus a lot of our other giveaways. So I just thought I'd just sneak that in there. So if you are a school and would like to work with us and trial out, we'd like a pilot done with Heidi's lessons, Math in Action. Hey, we'd love to have you on board, and just reach out to myself or Heidi or Rena or any of our team, and we can move on for there. Shantae says, I have some contacts that I can reach out as well. Sure thing, Shantae. Please do. Yep. So I think, the takeaways from this session is absolutely gold, Heidi. I really appreciate everything you've done. I know it's, how long have you been doing? How long did you start this project?
2 years ago, because Heather's been piloting for the last 2 years.
2 years. So 2 years in the making. And
and that was the other exciting thing that Heather did say. She said that her students in the second year, the ones that saw the lessons in that first year, they were retaining the knowledge of how to use those cards. So they didn't forget, they retained it.
And I think that's repeating, constantly. You keep on trying, right? And you keep on practicing with KaiBot. You're doing it. You're making the challenges slightly harder each time. There's different ways of having a lot of fun with this, and that learning happens by the engagement. So yeah, that's really good. I'll just share my final screen here. So, thank you again to everybody from wherever you are. Thanks to all the questions. Shantae, Jen. Thank you to Margaret. Thanks everyone for joining, and especially a big shout out to Heidi for making such an amazing resource. And I look forward to catching up with you at ISTE. If you're going to be there, that'll be great. Let's hang out and have a lot of fun and catch up with old friends. Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you. Bye-bye.